The wind howled across the white plains of the Arizona frontier, carrying with it the bitter bite of snow that didn't belong in this land. The year was 1879, and winter had come early, cruel and unexpected. The desert that once burned under the sun now lay buried under a blanket of ice. Ethan Cole rode through the storm like a shadow on his weary horse. Dusty, his coat was torn at the sleeve, his face cut from a recent skirmish with outlaws, and yet his eyes stayed sharp. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. He wasn't heading anywhere in particular. Men like him never were. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Through the blur of snow, he saw movement, faint, fragile. Two figures stumbling, their steps uneven. He reined in his horse, blinked hard through the blizzard. They were women, young, wrapped in thin, torn blankets, faces pale against the storm. He rode closer. "Hey!" he shouted over the wind. "You'll freeze out here." One of them turned toward him, her dark hair matted with snow, her eyes fierce despite the cold. "We cannot stop," she said in broken English. "My sister, she is hurt." Ethan jumped down and rushed to them. The younger one, barely conscious, was shivering uncontrollably. He lifted her gently into his arms. "You'll die if you stay another minute," he said, voice firm. "There's a cabin half a mile north. We're going there." They didn't argue. They couldn't. Inside the small, weather-beaten cabin, Ethan laid the younger sister by the fire and covered her with his coat. The older one, maybe 20, maybe younger, watched him closely, uncertain whether to trust this stranger. "Name's Ethan," he said quietly as he stirred the fire to life. "You?" She hesitated. "Nayeli," she said finally. "And my sister. Her name is Tala." Ethan nodded. "You're Apache." Her chin lifted with quiet pride. "Yes, our people were attacked. We ran. But the snow—" Her voice broke, her eyes glistening with grief. Ethan said nothing. He simply wrapped another blanket around Tala, whose breathing began to steady. He had seen too many victims of greed, too many innocents caught between white men's wars and native revenge. He had no sides anymore, only a conscience that refused to die. Hours passed. The storm raged on, but inside there was warmth, the crackle of fire, the rhythm of breathing, the silent connection between three lost souls. Nayeli watched him through the flicker of light. The man was rugged, scarred, but gentle, the kind of strength that didn't demand fear, only respect. She didn't understand why she felt safe near him, only that she did. When morning came, the world outside was buried in silence. The snow had stopped, but the cold still burned. Ethan checked Tala's fever and smiled faintly. "She'll live." Nayeli's eyes softened. "You saved her. You saved us both." Ethan shrugged. "Anyone would have done the same." She shook her head slowly. "No, not anyone." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment the war, the storm, and the years between them vanished. There was something in her eyes, something fierce and fragile, like the desert after rain. As the days went by, the storm kept them trapped. Ethan hunted for food, chopped firewood, mended wounds. The sisters slowly regained their strength. They laughed again, quietly at first, then freely, filling the small cabin with a warmth Ethan hadn't felt in years. But something else began to stir, something dangerous. When Ethan would return from hunting, he'd find Nayeli tending the fire, her eyes meeting his with quiet gratitude that lingered too long. Tala, too, began to follow him outside, laughing softly, her youth returning. Each saw in him a savior, a hero, but for Ethan, it was never that simple. One night, as the fire burned low, Nayeli sat close beside him. "When the snow melts," she whispered, "will you leave us?" Ethan hesitated. He wasn't a man of promises. "Maybe," he said, "but not yet." Tala stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly, a dream or perhaps a prayer. Nayeli leaned closer, her eyes shining in the firelight. "Then stay," she said, "for one more night." Outside, the wind began to howl again, as if the mountains themselves warned them of what was coming. Ethan didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything, for him, for Nayeli, and for Tala. Two hearts would begin to beat for the same man. And the storm outside was nothing compared to the one that was about to rise within.